Good morning, YouTube. Nice sunny day here in Blighty. Obviously, being November, it's a bit chilly, so I've still got my coat on, so I'm not an idiot. Um, yeah, sort of some good news, some bad news, I think, today. Just having a look on the old YouTube and, news in general. So, it's now getting noticed that Christian nationalism, I'm getting my words all mixed up, is on the rise now, which is fantastic, in my opinion. If you're not watching my previous videos, I've only really become Christian since, I don't know when it was exactly, September. Yeah, maybe September, it might be in August. But I do feel as though it's the correct decision for my life, and as generally, so I think it's probably a better decision for most people in general. But I've noticed earlier this year when I were having this conversation with people online, they would just want to deny it. That the sources were fake, the stats were skewed, etc. But now they are sort of accepting that it is happening, and now they're trying to demonize it, obviously, because they have to try and demonize everything that they don't like anyway, everything that's against their political opinions. I consider this a complete win, and the only reason you wouldn't consider it a win is if obviously maybe you're not Christian, in which case why are you here? We're a Christian country. Although, no, I don't want that to sound like you have to be Christian to be here. But if you are here and you are uncomfortable with the Christian faith, then you need to leave. Simple as, really. If I went to China and I was uncomfortable with Taoism, is it, I think? I forget. Then I should leave. If I'm uncomfortable with Hinduism, then why the fuck would I be in India? Obviously I'm not in India, but I mean, in a hypothetical situation. So yeah, you might be worried, especially if you're on the hardcore Islamic side, because things aren't going to be too good, I don't think, if you're hardcore. And when I say hardcore, I mean like militant, aggressive, terrorist sympathising sort of Islam. Not just really firm in your faith, because that's fine. There was a lad I used to work with, I think it was from like Chad or Sudan, one of those countries. It was sound as a pound. He would pray on shift, which, fine by me. At that point I believed in God, but I wasn't a Christian per se. So I still respected the fact that he prayed and that he was devout, and he was a hard worker, kept himself to himself. Just a sound lad, really. So I don't have a problem with Muslims at all, just in general, just from the fact of them being a Muslim. I do have a problem with those when they are trying to lambast us, or try and change our culture, or pretend they have some perceived moral authority. Then, I have an issue with that. But nobody should really have anything to fear from Christian nationalism, unless you're like a hardcore commie, because the hardcore commies are not going to have anybody to side with soon. Islam doesn't want them. The nationalists don't want them. In the centre-left, people like me don't want them. So they're screwed if Christian nationalism does arise. Far more screwed than what the Muslims or anybody else ever would be. Because communism is antithetical to Christianity. Despite being a meta-narrative, communism is a meta-narrative that dislikes all the other meta-narratives, except Islam, for some peculiar reason. So yeah, Christian nationalism would just smash the communism in this country, especially because, essentially, Christians and stuff are just much nicer people, from my experience of interacting with them. They don't want you to go kill yourself for having a different political opinion. They don't try and coordinate attacks against you. You know, if you do something they don't like, they'll politely, not even ask you, I would say, just politely inform you why they didn't like it. But they still know that it's your life and your choices to make, and that your covenant is personal with Jesus. So if you're doing things wrong, it is up for Jesus and God to ultimately pass judgment upon you. You know, I kind of see Christianity as being similar to like the fitness industry, where if you're really into fitness and exercise, you don't enable other people. You know, if somebody's fat and overweight and I don't have time to exercise. You know, if you're really into fitness, you say, of course you've got time. Do you watch EastEnders? Or, you know, if you're in America, maybe like, do you watch some other shit? You know, so you've got that half an hour you could be exercising. That's half an hour you could be running. And I sort of see like the same thing within Christianity, in that they don't enable bad behaviours or bad personality traits, but neither do they sort of put a line in the sand and say, if you don't do this, then you're not allowed here anymore. I mean, at least to my knowledge, you know what I mean? I'm very new to the whole Christianity thing and interacting with them. But my interactions have always been positive. I always find Christians really warm, receptive, not argumentative. Like, for instance, I was watching a live stream of Ricky Doolan's. And then he had a Welsh pastor or reverend or whatever the terminology is on stream. It was Welsh. And somebody Welsh says, the Welsh accent is the best. And like, nobody, not even me, nobody was trying to disagree and say, and try and poo-poo them. And I'm not against that, you know. I get the banter that we have, you know, even within England, you know, North, South, Yorkshire, Manchester, you know, Lancashire, Yorkshire, I should say, you know, Scotland, England, Wales, everybody versus the Irish. Joking, Irish people, chill out. There's a joke. So, yeah, the receptive nature, I think, lends itself more to a conducive environment of which Great Britain would benefit from, rather than this bickering communism which just seeks to divide people at all times. And especially when you consider that communism has completely ignored working class people, and that's who they're supposed to represent. You know, people like me, like the Labour Party, don't support us anymore, but you know, religion still does. So I 100% perceive this to be a good thing. England, Great Britain, and even the entire archipelago is a Christian area. To deny it is a bit illogical because, as I've said in other videos, the flag, just the English flag alone, is a cross representing St George. Obviously, Scottish Saltire represents St Andrew, otherwise known as St Andrew's Banner, and then St Patrick Cross, all go together to make the Union flag / Union Jack, which is a Christian symbol. At the end of the day, there's no way of getting around that, just as the Turkish flag or the Pakistani flag have Muslim symbols in them. You know, you'd be an idiot, an absolute idiot, to think that the crescent, moon and star are not Islamic symbols that are on a flag. And same with the crosses, Christian symbols on flags. You know, we have bishops in the House of Lords. The King is head of the Church of England, and Parliament / the government governs or legislates on his behalf. We vote them in because we're sovereign people, but essentially, to It is all at the behest or the permittance of the king. So we are a Christian country, whether you like it or not. If you want to change that, you should probably just leave. Things are probably not going to end up very well for you, I don't think, if you try and change it. And if I went to Pakistan and tried to change it from being Muslim, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have a very happy ending. The very best case scenario is I'm instantly deported. You know, worst case scenario, they sort out my heartbeat problem. And just for clarity, I don't have a problem with my heartbeat. The problem would be that it's functional in their eyes, in the eyes of people who don't want it to change. And you know, I'm not saying it should change. Just giving an example. If they want to remain Islamic, that's their choice. It's their country, just as it's our choice in our country. If you don't like that, fuck off somewhere else. And you know, I suppose the other sort of maybe good news is that potentially the Labour Party might actually be ousting Starmer. Maybe. I mean, by the time this video's gone out, it might have happened. Or it might have been quashed. But, you know, I thought his time's been up for a long while, to be honest. He had numerous fuck-ups. Everything's all got worse. Nothing has got better. There's absolutely not one thing in the economy or society in general you could point at and say, oh yeah, Stammer did good with that. There's like literally nothing. I can't think of anything. And I am quite pragmatic. I'm happy to give somebody a little win, just as the, you know, as the anecdotal outlier to the rest of the argument. Even if it doesn't disprove the argument, I'm still happy to acknowledge there are outliers. But there is no outlier. Stammer's just done a piss poor job. And that twat, Rachel Reeves, has made it incredibly hard to find jobs this year. Which will then lead into the next thing I'm going to say. But, yeah, Starmer, Reeves, entire cabinet really, all need to go. Ideally, we need Labour out of government. Well, that only works if they, you know, form this sort of coup. I think coup is the wrong word as well. Because coups are military, you know, the military functions. There's no military involved in the Labour Party getting rid of Starmer. Betrayal, yeah, I don't know. There's got to be a better word for coup though. Because, you know, it's like when the word simp got altered. Like simp now means man who like, you know, is over compliant with women and will give them compliments even when they don't deserve any. But simp comes from the word simpering, which there are simpering qualities in simps, as we refer to them, but it's not what the word actually means. And I kind of think cool is going to be that new word where we start altering the actual definition. Because I was watching an actual video last night with a guy, I think he's called Combat Ready, I forget his name, a guy from the British military. I started following his channel actually when I had a RAF application pending. As he was giving, even though he's in the army, a lot of the advice is 90% the same, I'd say, you know, especially in regard to like accommodation, pay, benefits. Like, a lot of that is like uniform. And even he was saying that, you know, he's hearing whispers that some of the top brass in Britain are sending letters to Starmer saying that he'll be removed unless he resolves things. So I think that's kind of why we need to use the word coup correctly in case we have a proper one. Which, you know, in theory I'm against a coup. You know, I don't really want militaries grasping power. So I don't think usually they turn out very well. Just like most revolutions don't turn out very well. You know, and I would say most civil wars, in fact, don't turn out very well. Maybe in the far-flung future, you could look at China now and say, well, they had a civil war, they're doing fine. And so is Taiwan. But it was utter chaos for decades after that. You know, so that'd be like my entire lifetime in this country, kind of eviscerated due to a potential civil conflict. Potentially. I mean, it's hard to know how these things pan out. Maybe a civil conflict in the UK would be fast and hot and over pretty quick. Or maybe it'd be long, laborious, and make the UK a pariah state. It's hard to fully grasp, especially the longer things go on. So obviously the longer things go on, the more we let into the country that aren't going to be on our side, the more people then need to be dealt with in some way. And just for the avoidance of doubt, if you haven't watched my other YouTube videos, I'm not in favour of a civil war. It's just, in my opinion, looking inevitable. And especially with the job situation, which brings me back to the sort of last point I was going to raise. Just saw a video from Asmongold talking about, employment going up, people are just losing jobs, there's no more new jobs for people to go into because of AI. And I've been saying this all year since I've made my YouTube videos, that you will most likely be made unemployed, you watching this. Most likely. Not everybody. I had a conversation with somebody who used to go kickboxing with, he now owns his own gym, and he was under the strict impression that he'll not have to worry about AI because of his job, which is fine, yeah, and then going to take a long time for a robot to be able to coach people in kickboxing. But he did confess that he's been using AI as a PA, personal assistant. So I was saying to him, if you're using it as personal assistant, what's to say your competitors aren't? If they're using AI to operate faster, more efficiently and save money, then they are more effective in the market than you are. I kind of think that's something people aren't thinking about long term. They're just looking at my job's safe from a robot, so I'll be fine. Not looking at like the entire economy. Your job might be safe, but your competitor will use AI, which will then make your position go away when your company goes bust. Right, mate? Right. So you can't just think along those lines. You have to remember that it's an economics-wide principle that's occurring, essentially. I have a friend who works for his father, and he's not worried about AI because his dad's his boss. But his dad will have a competitor, and his dad's competitor might not have a son who's in that position and might just use a robot for it, thus freeing up wages and time, everything else. Sorry, I got distracted. To be able to function a lot quicker, which would potentially means that the competitor now starts out-competing my friend's father's business. And I kind of think that is emblematic of how people are looking at this. It'll be a long time before a robot takes my job. Maybe not. Maybe your job will just go completely because the business will go bust because it'll be out-competed by another organisation that's using AI and has found out how to utilise it. Right, mate. And this is not me like being transhumanist, because I'm not. If we ever brought out the Neuralink stuff, I would not be getting that. I'm not having a machine interact directly with my brain, thank you. But at the same time, I still use AI. If you want to keep up in this world, you've got to be using it, really. There'll be those that use it and those that don't. It's just like another industrial revolution, essentially. So you've got to be on the ball, and it's happening. It's been happening all year. People are like ignoring it. Got the optimism bias, but it's coming for you. It will come for you. You'll feel it no matter what. It's like pretending the Industrial Revolution wasn't going to affect you because you lived up in the Shetland Islands or in Orkney or something. It might take a while. It'll still get to you though. The backlash or the unforeseen consequences will still get to you. And I don't have a solution for everybody. My solution is obviously trying to get into YouTube content creation. That's what I did at university. So, you know, it fits within my wheelhouse. Obviously not all 6-7 billion people in the world can all become content creators. So I don't know what everybody's solutions will be. But you do need to start looking at how the economy is changing, figuring out what you're going to do, because your job is probably going to disappear. You're not going to be able to retire doing your job that you're doing now. You know, unless you're 60 now or something. Maybe you'll just make it by the skin of your teeth. It's highly likely that you won't if you're younger than that. I think you're going to end up in the freelance economy, gig work, I think. But in some way, I don't know. I kind of think it's better. You know, if I could, once I get YouTube to work for me and I can make money from it, I definitely prefer to do this than slogging it out at some shit warehouse, working for some moron that fucking thinks that you don't have bacteria in your body. And that has happened. I've worked with somebody like that. Site manager thought he didn't have bacteria in your stomach, or even in your body at all. Retard. Anyway, I'm going to make that the end of this video. I'll see you in the next one. Toodaloo.